Hello everyone, my name is Thomas, and today in this video we're going to be talking about the assembly workspace within Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm going to go over the basic workflow to get your media assembled and some of the basic editing methods to understand what's going on here. So without further ado, let's get started. So in the last video we imported our footage, and what we're going to do is we're going to sift through it. On a larger production, you'd have a lot more footage, or even on personal projects, you have a lot more footage, a lot more sound, a lot more images. So there are different couple ways to sort through all of this. You have a couple of views here. You have a list view. You can see that we have all of our files separated by color. So you can see that the images are a pink. The video without audio is like a lavender color. The video with audio is a bluer color, like a very light blue, and then just our pure audio is this kind of greeny teal color. If you scroll, you can see all the details about it. So you can see each of these video pieces. This one is 625 frames. This one is 1216. This one is 336. It'll probably have time codes if you're using time code like this. I'm using frames, so this is the numbers that I get. But if you're using time code, these are most likely going to be in seconds. Media duration, again, same thing. Here we have icon view, and this is the workspace that we were on before. This is where you can see the footage that you're looking at. And over here we have freeform view, which is just kind of having all of them in a much larger format. You can drag around your projects so that way it's things that need to be together can be together. I'm not a huge fan of this view. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of space and things get messy pretty quickly. So we're going to go back to icon view. Now that we're in icon view, let me show you some of the capabilities. So for footage, say the thumbnail isn't as accurate enough for you, you're not quite sure what you're looking at. What you can do is hover your mouse over the footage, and you can see that there's a blue bar under it, and you can scrub through by moving your mouse over the thumbnail, and that'll allow you to scrub through and kind of see what this footage was about. Let's see for these other ones, we have a drone shot, rapidly shifts to the ground, we back to the sky, back to the ground. So you can see what that one is about. This one over here, we have a road, and it looks like a fly through, like a panorama of this little mesa, this little mountaintop. But say this scrubbing technique isn't good enough for you and you actually want to see your footage for what it was. Well, what you can do is you can double click on any of the icons, say for example this one, and you'll see that our footage has now been put into this workspace, and this is called source. And what source allows you to do is actually watch your footage. It's kind of like a preview. So what you can do is you can press spacebar, and it'll start playing through, and you can hear it, see that it's playing. You can see the levels meter going up and down, and you can watch through and see if that's what you wanted. So for this one, be careful where you click. I would make sure that you're clicking either around on this like lighter gray area or on the name or something. Don't click on the thumbnail, because as you saw just now, when I clicked on the thumbnail, when I double clicked it, you'll see that it brought me to halfway through the footage when I wanted it to be at the beginning. So what I can do is just go to the in and press spacebar. So as you can see, we have our time lapse, or not our time lapse, our drone footage, where it's going through. We see the ground, whatnot, and we can do the same thing for both pictures. We can just throw a picture up on here, see if it's actually what we wanted, or we can do sound. And here we have our sound. So there we go. We can script through that. If we want just a certain part, we can go to a certain place, about there. So there we go. So once you've found what audio bait that you want, we can start to begin assembling. Assuming you've gone through and sorted your footage, maybe you deleted stuff. To delete stuff, all you have to do is click on whatever bit you want and hit delete on your keyboard, or you can right click and go to clear. I'm not going to clear just because I want to keep it, but assuming that this is all the footage that we want, all the media, we can begin assembly. So say we want to take this footage and put it into our timeline. What we're going to do is we're going to click and drag, and you'll see that over here it says drop media here to create sequence, so we'll drop it, and you'll see that now we have a timeline. Now let's start to understand what this timeline is. So at the top here we have our number of frames. So right here we're on frame 0. You can also check it right here. And as we go further, we're at 450 frames, which is about 20 seconds. Here we have 900 frames, about 40 seconds. This is assuming that you're rolling at 24 frames per second, which is what most videos do. Some do 30 frames per second. Here we have our playhead. This is the blue line with the arrow on top. This is our playhead. This determines what we see on here. And as you can see, as we move along the timeline, you'll see that this is now following the playhead. You can still check your footage over in here. So if we double click, we can still look at over there. We can still watch our footage from here. But if we click down here and start running the playhead, you can see that we're back on what the timeline sees. So over on the left side here, we have a bunch of these buttons and a bunch of these lines going across all these rows. The timeline can be separated into two categories. On the bottom here, we have our audio, and at the top here, we have our video. When I imported the audio or the video into the footage, you'll see that two tracks were created, a video track, which is the one on top, and an audio track, which is the one on the bottom. Now, if we go even closer, we can do this by scrolling on the scroll bar. We can scroll. Sometimes it might move forward and backwards like this if you're not in exactly the right position. So just beware. So if we move in closer, we can actually grab these ends and use that to zoom in. And as we can see here, we can see these lines with like little choppy bits out of it. So this scroll bar affects where you are on the timeline as well as how zoomed in you are, but it only works left to right. If we use these vertical scroll bars, you'll see that there's two here, one for your video and one for your audio. If we drag this bottom node upwards, you can see that we have our playhead, we have our waveform, but we can see we have our waveform and we can kind of see what we're looking at in terms of what we hear. Now this is going quite a bit fast, so I'll actually zoom out a little bit, but we can see what we're hearing more or less. So you can see where you have like no audio and you can cut that, or just random noise. On the top here we have our video, and it's the same thing. Now what are these multiple channels? Why do we have V1, V2, V3? Well, this allows you to stack footage. So if I bring this back down, it's a little finicky. It's not my favorite system, but what we can do is we can stack footage. So if we zoom back out and say we wanted our next piece of footage to start, what we could do is take one of these, put this on top. Now this footage actually doesn't have any audio, so if we won't actually hear anything, we'll actually change the footage to something else. We'll use the other one, this one. So as you can see, we have two tracks here, and you'll see that if we try and put them on top of each other, they'll split. So the video will go into V2, you'll see, and the audio will go into A2. Now, this footage doesn't actually have any real audio, but it's there anyways. But the difference between audio and video is that videos stacked on top of one another will only show one. You won't see the other unless this one is slightly transparent. But with audio, no matter what you put on top, you'll always hear both at the same time. So you'll see if I play this, it'll switch over to the top footage, but you can still hear the plain footage going through. You still hear the hum, and now you don't hear the plain footage anymore. We'll get into later how you can lower the transparency of any of these footage, as well as just general editing methods in the next video. But you can see that these are stacked on top of one another. You can, if you move them over and then move them down, You can move the footage to be one after the other, or we can move it so that way it's on top, or on top but on a different track. If you only want to move vertically, what you can do is you can click and hold shift. You can see that if I move vertically, it's fine, but if I try and move horizontally, you can see all that it's doing is moving up and down. So with these channels, you can think of them as the layers, as you would in something like Photoshop or Illustrator. And like with Illustrator and Photoshop, you have some options about what to do with these layers. For one, you can lock them. So if I click these, I can lock them, and now I won't be able to put anything in them. You'll see that if I try and drag in some audio or drag in image or anything, it'll go to the topmost layer, the ones that's unlocked. That's V4 up there. But if I try and drop in anything, nothing will work. So I can lock those. Same with the sound. What I can also do is hide layers. So if I were to bring this forward a little bit more and just place it so that way this one is on top, you can see that we have our desert footage on top, and that's visible. That's in V2, in the V2 channel. But if I click this eye, I can hide it so that way I can see just the plain footage. And this is more useful when you have transparencies and masks, and we'll get into that in later videos. But if we were to do that, we have the capabilities to see what's underneath. That's our video settings. With our audio settings, what we can do is we can mute the track. So we can mute only this track. We have our solo, which is here only this track. So I have footage or audio down here. But if I click S, I'll only be able to hear this track up here, but not this one or any other ones. Mute, I won't be able to hear this track, but I'll be able to hear everything else. And then this is the voiceover record. Now what this is for doing just simple voiceovers. So if I were to start, say I wanted to have a little recording over this piece of footage right here, what I could do is go to a free channel, and what I could do is click, and you'll see that there will be a countdown. And if I start talking, you can see that a waveform will develop. You'll see it says recording right here in the center. And if I click this again, you'll see that an audio track was just recorded. And if I go through that again, and that's how you just create simple recordings. I would personally prefer to export it to a digital audio workspace, a DAW, like Adobe Audition, for example. That'll allow you a lot finer control over your audio, and you can have a much clearer and more refined sound, assuming you know how to do that. If you just want a quick and dirty kind of audio, this is a great way to do that. Or you can do this for putting in sort of digital notes or audio notes. So in the future, you can sort of yell at yourself and say, hey, you need this effect, or put some color grading here, fix this over here, and such. Right down the center here, we have our tools, and there's a whole lot less tools than there normally is. Here we have our selection tool. The hotkey for that you can see is V. So if I hit V, you'll just have your cursor, and you can click around. Clicking and dragging is how you move your footage or media or whatever. Here you have your track select forward tool, and this is really handy. So if I use the C tool real quick, the razor, and just make a bunch of cuts and here and there. What I can do is I can use this tool. The hotkey for it is A. What I can do is it'll select everything forward of whatever you're clicking and move it forward. So say I wanted this, everything forward of this piece of footage moved forward. I'll click. You'll see that everything forward of it, and that includes stuff that is technically starts behind it, but it continues on forward of this track. So be mindful of that. But it selects everything, and I can move it forward. You'll see now that we have a gap because everything has been moved forward. Really handy tool. Just use Control Z to undo everything. Here we have our ripple edit tool. So what I can do with this is go to the edge of something. Let me actually move this I want it to actually be in front of. And so what I can do with this ripple edit tool is I can go to the edge of this one. You'll see that if I go to the edge, a new cursor icon will appear, and it has sort of a left bracket, kind of a backwards E look, and that just signifies which piece of footage you're affecting. So you can see that if I go over to the edge of this forward one, it's kind of finicky, but you can see that the bracket has switched directions. It now looks like a letter E. That means I'm affecting the one most forward. This means I'm selecting the one furthest back. So if I click and drag, you'll see that I chopped this one, but instead of there being a gap, so if I were to just do that with the move tool, you can see that we have a red icon, a red version of it. And if I were to do that, you would see that I would cut it off, but this wouldn't be moved back. There'd just be a gap left here. And so that just speeds up the process. So ripple edit just cuts it, but also moves whatever was furthest back here backwards. We have here our razor tool, one that's using the hotkey C, and this is just for making cuts. This is just to divide the footage. I use C and V quite often, although I started using the ripple tool. And what you can do is just make cuts and say, you know, I want that piece gone, and I hit delete on the keyboard. Now we won't worry about the pen tool, the hand tool, or the type tool until we get to a later video. Was just playing through the footage. And the way to do that is using your J, K, and L keys. So J plays backwards, K is your pause, and L is play forward. If you double click J or double click L, it'll go into a rewind, like a 2x rewind. So it's going a little faster. Double click L. See, it's going a little faster, and if you triple click it, it'll go even faster. My computer is actually struggling to process that, probably with the recording, but we won't worry about that. But that about sums it up for this tutorial. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. You have a good one.